Okay, we have a couple folks pop in. Hi, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I love the waving. Thank you all. I don't have my pom-poms ready. We're going to talk about unsolicited CMAs today, which are one of my favorite tools for reminding my sphere and developing my sphere further as a real estate resource, and for just showing market knowledge, becoming a resource, and engaging communications. I'm going to share my screen here. All right, can I get a thumbs up? You guys can see my house on money. Okay. Yep. So unsolicited, thank you everyone. Unsolicited CMAs concept. Think about the number one question that people actually are asking a real estate professional. How is the market? And I know that's a loaded question right now because there are a lot of answers and it's busy and it's wonderful. But what's the next question? What do you think my home is worth these days? As people are watching the news and seeing how crazy the market is, folks that are either have been thinking about selling for a while or are newly motivated by some equity they may have built in the near future or in the recent future or recent past, recently, they're considering selling. So being the person that engages them to answer those questions that are rattling around in the back of their minds can really be a great way to kick off the opportunity to list their home. They're naturally curious about the value of the home, and it's understandable. So points to consider. I recommend, this was always a weekly goal that I set for myself, to send out a number of unsolicited CMAs. So set a weekly goal for how many you will send. Remember not to call it a CMA. As realtors, we run into this trap that we use our realtor jargon and people don't know what that means. And I do that on a regular basis. So for any of our newer agents that I just did that to, CMA is a comparative market analysis. So that is a market analysis of what somebody's home is worth. The general public doesn't understand CMA necessarily, or if they do, we want to be a little more generic in our terms so they feel comfortable asking questions if they don't quite understand what it means. Consider calling it a market analysis, or how much could your home sell for today? Your home may be worth more or less than you think. Obviously now we're looking at that more scenario. Real estate agents are not supposed to define value of a home. Be careful with that slippery term, right? Appraisers are the ones who are setting a value. We're going to talk about what the market, the recommended listed price could be, how much equity they have in their home. So think about what language would appeal to you if you were receiving the communications that you're delivering. If you've not been in the home, be careful not to set a definite value. So if you're sending an unsolicited CMA as an attempt to show your neighbors what their home may be worth, past clients that purchased from you years ago, remember that there's so much happening inside of a home that we don't know about. They may be the Pinterest king and queen and have the most beautiful decor that would show well and get them top dollar, or they may have destroyed floors, they may be smoking in the home, there may be pet odor, whatever, those things that can really affect market value, and we just don't know. So when I'm sending an unsolicited CMA, I'm sending ranges, or I'm sending market data that engages them to reach out to me for more information. So just be careful about sending a definitive number when you're sending a market analysis to somebody if you haven't seen their home. Don't overwhelm the homeowner. Keep the CMA simple with a few key numbers to think about. I've seen agents that come and bring this huge report that includes 50 properties that have listed and sold in the immediate area, and that's a lot of data, may become overwhelming, and may make somebody nervous about going to the next steps of trying to understand more about selling their home. So keep it simple. We want to have enough data that it feels like we put the work in, they feel like they're getting a good snapshot of what's happening, but it's not overwhelming. How do we deliver? And we're going to actually walk through these examples. My preferred delivery for an unsolicited CMA is through Moxie Presents. So that's the example that I'll be sharing with you today. We also have a number of agents who have done packets they're dropping off at doorsteps or mailed them in the physical mail. So there are a number of different options that you may consider. Again, today we're going to talk about Moxie Presents, emailing those, or direct messaging those through social media, and we'll go through some examples there. Mario, good question. How much range is too much? That's a great question. And it's really, I would say, going to be subdivision specific. And if anybody wants to chime in, please feel free, share experiences, share ideas, and I'll pause to make sure everybody can share ideas as well. But Mario, I'm going to say that's going to depend on both the price point for the neighborhood and the type of subdivision. You know, if we are in a subdivision that is a production developer, a planned development, I would say your range should be smaller. If there are any extremes that are in there, that house that just sold crazy high and we can't figure it out why, I would leave that out. But my range would be smaller when it comes to those subdivisions that have more consistency. But if I'm in a rural area, I'm going to have a very broad range. Or if I'm in a custom or even luxury range, custom range, we know that we can have huge fluxes that are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what I would try to do is the more research you can do on the property, and we'll kind of talk about different examples and walk through those, the more information you can do on the property to narrow down and maybe take out some of the extremes. Find out if it's one of the homes in the subdivision with a larger acreage, if that's one of the swings that causes values to change. If there are a couple different sections of a subdivision that have different price ranges depending on the builder that's building in there, I would try to tailor it to that area. Jenny, you're asking 5K up or down. It's normally, for me, it's tens of thousands. And if you're in a custom area, you might be swinging 50,000 to 100,000. I mean, that really could depend on the price point. And we'll go through some examples so we can narrow that down. An important reminder when we're thinking about delivery, and we're going to talk about examples of that, please remember that Texas is a non-disclosure state. We're a non-disclosure state, which means we don't publicly advertise our sales prices. When a home sells in Texas and the deed is recorded, in many states that deed is recorded along with the sales price, so it's public data. But it's a wonderful thing for real estate agents that sales price is only recorded in the MLS for us. So we have to be careful when you create this beautiful CMA, make sure that we're not posting sales prices publicly to the general public. So we want to think about when we're delivering unsolicited CMA that we're delivering this individual or this information to individuals that could benefit from this for a sales standpoint. That makes sense? Good there. So we're going to create some beautiful market examples. We can have people sign up for neighborhood news and post that information, but we want to be careful about that sold data that we create in a CMA. Just so you guys know this, I'm going to walk through this in Moxie Presents, so we'll live tinker with this and live through this process, but I've included in the slides that we'll have as a follow-up the basic steps that we're going to cover. So my favorite way to deliver an unsolicited CMA is by creating a Moxie presentation. I use the Moxie Basic Seller, which is the 13 pages that we've saved as our favorite pages for a CMA. So we'll walk through this in just a moment and do actual click-by-click instructions. Know that Moxie presentations contain the most up-to-date market information. This is tied to your MLS. And I like to create subdivision-specific unsolicited CMAs so that I can reuse this over and over again. So I'm going to show this to you guys as we're clicking through this. But again, I wanted you to know that you have these reminders of where to find these features that we're going to cover here in the overview and the training. So for my subdivision, I live in the Canyons at Scenic Loop. I took a photo of the front of my subdivision, so it's something that's familiar to all of my neighbors, so I can reuse this over and over again. I created a market analysis with a range of prices in the subdivision, and I can share this specifically with multiple neighbors directly. Or if I want to make it personal and send it directly to the Smith family, I can copy or duplicate that one presentation I've created, rename it the Smith Family Market Analysis, and I can send it to them directly. So it has a really personal touch for them. And if I really want to go to the next level, I can even drive by and take a picture of their home and use that as the cover photo. That makes sense? We're going to walk through this. I see some big eyes. Don't worry. We're going to click through this. This is more showing you guys what I've got as slides for you to go back and reference. No panic. I also included some examples for follow-up. So my market analysis, my unsolicited CMA is my attempt to reach out to people and say, hey, the market is incredible. You may have built some equity in your home that you don't even realize. I'd love to be your real estate resource if you're considering selling your home. That first step is that message that I send, and I send the market analysis. And then you guys know how important it is to continue to touch those individuals and stay front of mind. So I've even given examples of some follow-up you might consider. And I'm going to include an example in my follow-up to all of you with the slides and the video here. I've included a script. Hey, John Smith, I just wanted to reach out and say I've been thinking about you. The number one question I'm getting in today's market is how's the market? And the number two question is, what's my home worth? So I thought I'd put that information together for you. I hope you took the time to review it and you now have a little better understanding of what's happening in the marketplace. If you have any questions, please know I'm here for you. Something to that effect, and you could send a video follow-up asking if they saw the market analysis, which is going to reiterate that it's something that you took the time to send specifically to them and that it wasn't an automated message. Let me pause here. Mark Stilling said, thinking 5% flux in a production neighborhood. I'd agree if you're looking at production, absolutely. Could we say something like, did you know a home in your neighborhood sold for $100,000 over? Yes, we can give ranges. Good question there. Absolutely, as long as we're not posting, I just sold 123 Main Street for $300,000, or I just sold 123 Main Street for $100,000 over list price, because that pretty much tells us the price, right? If we're speaking in generic terms and giving an information about what's happening in their market, that certainly is allowable. Another question, if I'm cold calling and the homeowner asks about a specific property in the area and what it sold for, I can tell them that, correct? Correct, absolutely. So don't let me scare you guys when it comes to Texas being a non-disclosure state. You are a resource. You can talk to folks about what homes are selling for. If you see the neighbor at the mailbox and they ask you what that pink house down the street sold for, you can certainly answer that question. We just don't want to publicly advertise that information. We can give it to individuals that can benefit from that information and understanding their market value, their taxes. We just want to make sure that we're not publicly advertising that information. Does that make sense? Any other questions there? I'll pause, and if anybody wants to unmute and ask questions, please feel free. All right. Okay, awesome. You're welcome, Emily. So who do we target? We're talking about the concept in unsolicited CMA. You're going to send a market analysis to somebody to, again, show them what's happening in the market and be their real estate resource. Who are we targeting? And I know this, I have folks on multiple boards, so I'm just showing examples here of what you can consider. But you can target your own past clients, whether you have those beautifully organized in a past client directory or label in your contacts, or you need to go back and do an MLS search looking at your past clients. You can certainly pull that and send messages such as, hey, I can't believe it's been 5 years since you moved into the house. I was wondering, or I thought you might be curious how much equity you've built in that time. Here's a market analysis I created for you, or an overview of the market I created for you to give you a feel for that. For those of you, anybody, no matter what board you're in, if you run an MLS search and you're looking for your past clients, I would encourage you just to add the license number as a search criteria, which is what we do. In our SABOR MLS, we put seller or selling agent ID. That means I was the buying agent on the deal. So each MLS allows you to, in Austin, if anybody knows off the top of your head what that search criteria is to add to your MLS, if you utilize that, please feel free to post. Who else can you target? House anniversaries. I used to set a practice that on the first week of every month, I would send out unsolicited CMAs to everybody who had purchased their home in that month in the years past. Since they're less likely to sell right away, anybody that purchased in the last 2 years, I wasn't necessarily targeting them, but I would run an MLS search for folks who had purchased in my subdivision in the month of April. We're almost there, April 1st, right? The month of April in 2018, 2017, 2016, and I'd send them a quick message or a handwritten note that said happy house anniversary. I've included some market information in case Woo, woo. In case you're curious how much equity you've built in your home in that time. I think I need more caffeine. I'm a little tongue-tied today. Does that make sense? Don't worry, I have it in hand. We'll get through it. House anniversaries. For any of you who have taken my geofarming classes in the past or database development classes, and you've connected and been using the title toolbox or ProFarm tool with the title company, if you download any information from those types of apps where you're pulling database information for folks in your subdivision, those databases actually include the purchase dates for anybody on that list. So you can actually use that as your spreadsheet to know exactly when people purchased versus doing an MLS search. Who else can you target? It is garage sale season, and I think between Facebook Marketplace, garage sale apps, that's a great place to find people who are considering selling. Download a few of the garage sale apps or track them online. Search Facebook Marketplace for large sales. Check out garage sales on Craigslist. These are all individuals who might be getting rid of items to prepare for showing. This is the perfect time for you to be the person to reach out and ask them if they're curious what their home is worth. So that can be a practice, again, that you set once a week for those Mondays or Tuesdays for those garage sales coming up over the weekend, and deliver a unsolicited CMA to those individuals. I used to utilize this on a regular basis and search hashtags. I would limit it to my area of town, to my city, and I'd go and look at search hashtags on social media for people who were saying, thinking about selling, need a realtor, home buyer, my first home, things that are popping up. Anything that you can think of that maybe that somebody's gearing up for a need, and home buyer would be the other end of it, right? But this is a great opportunity for you to find folks who have a real estate need utilizing hashtags, and I think you'll be surprised how many folks you run into and you can reach out to. There are systems such as Courthouse Retrieval System, and my Austin folks, you guys have shared information with me on the best tool for you to utilize in your appraisal district searches as well, that you can look for potential downsizers, and your message there could be, are you considering downsizing? Or I prefer to say, are you considering right sizing and curious how much equity you have in your home? And you can do searches for folks who have only lived in their home for at least 7 years. They're in over 3,500 square feet and they're in 5+ bedrooms. So those folks that might be considering getting rid of some of that extra space could be a good target as well. Nellie, can you send to past buyers when you were the seller's agent? Great question, 100%. Every time I sell a home, I actually, when on the listing side, I save the buyer's contact information into my database as well. I know, little sneaky, but that transaction's done. That's somebody that I had an interaction with. Maybe they saw the beautiful advertising you did on that home when you were selling it. If they go to sell in the next couple of years, they're going to think of you. And I know a number of you have had great returns on that they called you back and said, you did a great job selling it when we bought it. Would you consider selling it for us? So I 100% love that idea, Nellie. Again, and if Beth's on the call, she can chime in on this. She made some additions for us here as well for using your property searches in your local tax appraisal sites. And we'll tinker through this. For any of you who are going to start this process and want to tinker through this, I'll actually go through this with you online as well. And I love that we just recently was October, had a training on RPR for doing searches for those individuals that we can target as well. So Beth embedded for us the video so you can go back, or you can go on the Boss and find that next level training in the next level training folder from October 26th. And it was Discover New Listings and New Prospects with RPR. So if you're looking for those folks that you want to send your unsolicited CMA for, you can go through that and it'll actually give you click-by-click instructions. All right, that's a lot of information. We're going to recap that at the end, and I actually want to tinker with the system because the main reason we had this request, we were talking about that, was figuring out how to really start this process. Couple of questions here. Can you send the RPR CMA for out of state? The RPR CMA, you can get fairly good data for most markets. It depends on how much information is fed by a local market in order to figure out how accurate RPR is going to be and how much data you can find. In certain markets, you find a ton of data, and others, it's very limited. From an unsolicited CMA standpoint, if I were targeting folks out of town, if you're trying to become the referral source, I would really just focus on leading RE materials and talking about your partners in the community as a bigger value add, because you're not going to actually win the listing directly out of state. I don't know if the market analysis is the exact tool for you to try to target those individuals. Does that make sense? If I mail out CMAs with past sales and prices to neighbors, would that be considered publicly advertising and is something not allowed? No, you can send, if you're sending direct information to individuals with a message that you'd like to be their resource, you're providing that valuable information and you're trying to give them a market update, you are permitted to do that. Just don't send out a postcard that has eyes open to everybody and has that public data on it. You're going to be sending something in a closed envelope. Good question. So Susan, you're reiterating you have family considering in San Francisco. You can certainly do that as a value add for your family and see how much market data you can find there. But I'd really be focusing on that leading RE message and the fact that we have strong partners out there who are some of the best real estate agents in that market because they've earned their way into leading RE and the opportunity to help them with selling their home. All right, let's talk Moxie Presents and actually creating an unsolicited CMA. From my main screen in my boss, I'm going to go to Present to get to Moxie Presents. On the top right-hand side, I create new. I'm gearing this towards a seller. I'm sending a market analysis in the attempt to gain a listing, and I'm going to click Continue. In my brokerage templates, one of the templates I have available to me is the basic seller template. It is 12 pages of the pages that we feel provide the most value when it comes to a CMA or a market analysis. Just to recap, if you're sending an entire listing presentation, we have the Austin listing presentation and the seller listing the San Antonio listing presentations. That includes both that 12-page market analysis as well as the steps to selling their home and all the brilliant marketing that we're going to do. So if you haven't utilized Moxie Presents a great deal, realize that's the difference there. So in this example, I'm not going to overwhelm them with all the marketing I'm going to do. I want to set an appointment to meet with them after they receive this market analysis to do that. So I'm sending just the basic seller presentation and I'm going to continue. I personally, if you're going to start working your GeoFarm area, I'm going to call it an example so I remember in my database in the future, I would start out with creating one that's generic for the subdivision. I would probably take a photo of something that's in the area that your subdivision, your neighbors would recognize, whether it's the neighborhood sign. One of our agents uses the longhorn that's in a gate right outside of the subdivision, something that's familiar so they realize that it's personal to them. And I'm going to create. On the first screen, if I'm doing a market analysis for somebody specific, I will pull up on my other screen here. I'll actually get an MLS number. Remember on your first screen when you're using Moxie Presents, this is the section. Actually, I'm going to do my generic example first, and then I'll come back and show you the other example. But on this first screen, it's asking for the subject property. If you're going to do this for your entire subdivision and create something generic, I'm going to skip the data about the specific property. And then I'm going to come back and show you the alternative for a home that you're sending specific targeted market analysis for. So I want to create one that I can use for everybody in my subdivision multiple times. So I'm going to say this is prepared for the Canyons at Scenic Loop, and I'm going to upload my subdivision photo here. That subdivision photo I would just have saved on my computer. And I'm going to pick a generic house here quick, just so you guys see where the image appears. For your subdivision, you could fill in community information, the community subdivision information, the school data, again, so it's familiar and it shows the information that you put in. Just make sure it's only the generic information that would apply to all properties in that subdivision. And then the magic rule with Moxie Presents is make sure you, on the very bottom right, you're following the continue button, making sure you're not losing data on each page. So on the bottom right, I'm going to select continue. And this is going to take me to the search tab. So Moxie Presents is walking me from left to right through all of these tabs, and it's going to allow me to search. You have two options. You can run your search here in Moxie just like you can in your MLS, or you can actually input MLS numbers. So if you're doing this on the fly and you already found the comps you want to use and you want to just copy and paste the MLS numbers you found, you can put those here and you just put a comma in between each of those numbers. But my preferred practice is actually that I'm going to run my search right here in Moxie Presents. That way, anytime I reload this CMA, my search is saved and any new properties that fit into my search criteria will be added. So I don't have to redo this every time. It's going to incorporate all of the newest listings and sales into my CMA. All right, so just like the MLS, when I'm running a search, I can set price ranges, beds and baths, and I have additional filters. Remember that I'm going to keep this generic to apply to the entire subdivision, so that I'm going to go pretty broad here with my original information. And I have to figure out why. Give me a load. Reload here. There we go. I was searching out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't have anything coming up, so I just narrowed in on San Antonio. I can narrow down in Rogers Ranch. I think I'll use Rogers Ranch. Sorry, Austin folks, I don't know your subdivisions as well, so we're going San Antonio here. Actually, I don't know them at all. All right. So in this example, I want to, for me, I'm going to draw on this and I'm going to do a multi-point draw, which is similar to what each of you are used to in your MLSs. And I'm going to pick this one section of Rogers Ranch that I know is somewhat similar properties. It's the areas that were developed at the same time, same couple of builders. So I know it's going to be good data, that I'm not pulling anything that a neighbor might say, that's an extreme, they shouldn't have included it. So I want to be generic, all-inclusive of the number of people I might send this to, but I want to make sure it's good data that really provides value to them. So I'm going to draw my polygon just like you're used to on the MLS, and then I'm going to come to the left and I'm going to say include all. The biggest hiccup I hear when you guys have a hard time utilizing your Moxie Presents is that you forget to include those properties that the search finds. So you get later steps and you're missing property data. So I'm going to click through here. On this page, I am looking at the listings that came up, and this is where I could make adjustments, altering for if a property has a pool, doesn't have a pool. I'm not going to do anything on this page because I'm not trying to get that finite in my CMA. On the bottom right, I'm clicking continue. And this is where I have the opportunity to create my estimates. Now I'll tell you, I skipped the step of reviewing through all the properties. What you're going to want to make sure you're doing, you're trying to show your sphere that you are the market expert. Make sure you review all of that data. I'm not going to do that in front of you guys today, but review that data to figure out where you think that range is that home can be of value. In this subdivision, I'm going to say we're looking at about a 48 or 480,000. I'm going to create my range, 480 to 540,000. I'm going to estimate as the range that I would apply here for that section in that subdivision. So that's where I can create my range. I also like that this is a section that I can write a note where I can say, this is a range that I'm providing based on the recent sales. However, the next step in the process is that I could visit with you, see your home, and give you a more accurate estimate of exactly what your home could be listed and sold for today. I click continue, and then this is exactly where I'm going to see the presentation that I've created. I do encourage you to go page by page and customize this to look exactly how you want it to look. So for instance, on the cover page, I like turning on having my photo, so they're instantly seeing my brand, my headshot. I'm building that brand familiarity, and I'm going to turn on the cover photo, that image that I uploaded of the subdivision, or if I'm really doing a stellar job, the image of their home if I'm making this specific to them. I can X out of this, and I'll see that this page reloads, and they're going to see that image that I've included and my branding that's going to be included as well. Pause for questions here. Marissa, you asked, am I only including sold and pendings? It's actually going to be the default of Moxie, and I didn't change it, that it'll include actives, sold, and pendings. There just didn't happen to be any actives that were on there. It just happened that way on that one that I did. Great question. You can change, if ever you need to, you can change what's included in your filters when you're filtering in Moxie. Is there a time frame or a time when it may be better to run comp specific sets in the MLS than enter in the MLS numbers in Moxie? Susan, if you're doing a really complex CMA where you're more comfortable in MLS because you have more filters available to you, or maybe you're running a property that has unique features, horse stables, or something that Moxie doesn't have a filter for, I would definitely run my comparables in the MLS and then pull those MLS numbers and copy and paste them into Moxie. The reason I like Moxie actually drawing it there if I don't have any of those extremes or I don't need any more filters than they offer is because, again, when I come back in and I go to reuse this, it's easy for me to pull all the newest properties because I've already set my filters and drawn in Moxie. It'll pull all the newest data versus me having to go back to MLS every time and pull properties. And then, Leah, I'll show you the example on your subject property. If the property is not coming up, you have to manually enter it. So I'll go back and do that example for you in a moment. And then, Nellie, the place where I turned on my photo on my cover page, I just hit the edit pencil here and hit agent photo and info to turn it on so I can turn on my cover photo and my agent photo. And then what I encourage you to do is go page by page and find the information that you included. This example, the property summary is where you would see the information you added about the schools, about the subdivision, those details. You can see the listing location map, which I love. This is probably the favorite part for people when they see a market analysis. They could walk the neighborhood if they wanted and see all of these properties. So they'll see the comparables that you pulled. The listing overview is just that. They can click on any of these properties and see it. And I really like the side-by-side comparison because they can scroll through. For me, I'll say this gets to be a lot of duplicate information. There's 3 pages that show all of the comps in different ways. So sometimes I delete out that side-by-side comparison just because I feel like it's a lot of the same data over and over again. That's just a personal preference. But in the status comparisons, I hit the pencil here, and I actually select information that I know in that subdivision is pertinent for somebody trying to get a feel for value of home. Bedrooms, square footage, lot size, and any items that I select here will appear. It'll take just a moment to load, and they'll be able to compare how sales prices and data compares depending on those key features. So I really love that you can personalize this image depending on what information would be important in that subdivision. In some subdivisions, the lot sizes are all similar. You don't have to worry about it. In others, that's a major factor. So make sure you're adding that information. And there are a lot of features you can select here. I should include sold price. That's an important one. And days on market could be very pertinent. So I like that for them to see all of that data when this spreadsheet is created, and it automatically inputs all that information for you. Listing averages. Look how much work it looks like I did. If we were just clicking through this, we'd have been taking about 5 minutes to do this, and it looks like you guys spent hours working on all these reports for the averages, average days on market, and there's a number of other features in here. Price versus size, great data where they can see how the size is affecting the price overall. Now be careful, there are some pages loaded that are specific if you're not doing just an unsolicited CMA, but you're working specifically for a seller to provide information. So for instance, Net proceeds, I'm not providing that for an unsolicited CMA, so I need to delete that page out versus having a blank page in my profile. And then again, you're going to, as long as you've loaded your biography or your bio into Moxie, the last page is going to be the agent profile, so they'll learn more information about you. And you can turn on details here as well to customize this to add your headshot and those details in your profile. Once you're all done with creating that, you're going to select view, and I'm going to view my web version just to double check that everything that I edited, all my pages provide quality content. I don't have any typos, those details, and you'll see exactly what your folks that you're sending this to are going to see when you send them this presentation. And it's super mobile friendly, so even if they open it on their phone, they're going to be able to view it. So that's just my preview of it. And I want to show you guys the options you have. We have the options. View gives me the option to send the web version, which is live. They can click on it. They can see the properties. They can view photos. It's always my preferred. But if you're going to print this and deliver it, you have a print version, which is a PDF, and it's also beautiful. So let's say you're going to drop it at the front door, or you're going to go to a party at the neighbor's house and you're going to bring a couple of these with you. Yes, I'm that geek who's done it. In case anybody was curious what was happening in the market, I print a couple out and I bring it with me. So this creates a beautiful printed version of what we just went through. You can send this directly from here. So I can send the presentation, which is the web view version, or the PDF. And just so you're aware, when I start typing in here, anybody that I have already saved in my Moxie Engage, this will start auto-completing for their email address. So it's really easy for you. If you're working your GeoFarm, your neighbors, you've already imported them, you can just start typing a name and it's going to auto-pull their email address if they're in your Moxie Engage system. You can put a subject line. I think it's going to make me put somebody in here first. And then your, let's see, what is your home worth? Or considering selling. My greeting is, hi, John. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Hi, Smith family, something to that effect, and my message. If I were delivering this to neighbors and I was going to set a practice of sending unsolicited CMAs to 10 neighbors every week, I would write a message that's generic enough that it would say, hey neighbor, it's important to me that I become your real estate resource. In case you're curious what's happening in the market, and I might include a little snippet of what's happening overall in our market, and then I've created a report specific to you and I would send this. I also like to keep a practice. The default is to send a copy to yourself so you have that email saved and that record of sending it. And you can see back in your Moxie contacts that you sent that unsolicited CMA to them as well. So we made this very subdivision specific, or generic, I really should say. So I'm going to go back and just show you a couple of options here. Once you've created a CMA that works for anybody in your subdivision, which is what we just did, you can then go back and you have 3 dots here and you can view it. You can share it directly. So I could share with from here with neighbors. I can also duplicate this, which is what I really want to do a stellar job of showing personal interest and going above and beyond and sending an unsolicited CMA. This is exactly what I do. I duplicate this and then I come back and I edit it to be specific to that one neighbor that I'm sending it to. So on my subject property, I would make it prepared for the Smith family. And I would pull if they've sold in the past, typically a benchmark, if they've sold in the last 7 or so years, that's when I'm seeing those properties are still popping up in Moxie and on our MLS. If it's before that, Leah, you asked what happens if it doesn't auto-populate. You just have to manually enter that information. So it might be that you go pull that data from tax records or take a photo of a house and send it. I'm going to pull just to show you guys how easy this is. For one that sold recently, I can copy and paste an MLS number over. When I say recently, last 7 years, copy it in here and hit copy, and it's going to pull all the data for that home and make that report beautiful and intuitive to the Smith family or whoever that may be. I had already done the search when I created this report before, so I have the comps showing up in here. They'll load in just a moment. I just hit cancel on that. Sorry, guys. Ooh, so in my bad example, I picked a house that is not in my search window before. So I got confusing on you. So make sure you're, in my example, I copied one that was for Rogers Ranch, but I didn't use an MLS number that was Rogers Ranch. So I just confused the system. Don't do that. In your example, you wouldn't be doing that. Realize that if you're doing this for your neighbors, you'd be picking a house that was in there. So it just got confused and jumped to a new map over here. But in your scenario, your data would already be completed here, so that you would go right to finishing that report. All you had to add was your subject data for that house that you were making it specific to in that subdivision. That makes sense?
Hey, Erin.
Yes.
If you are doing a specific one for a neighbor or something, can you just search it by the address?
In the subject property, it's going to ask you for the MLS number to copy data, or you're going to plug in the location here below. So it gives me the option here, either the MLS number, that's so it's auto pulling from MLS all of the data. But if you want it to auto pull, you actually have to use an MLS number. Otherwise, you're manually entering that information. So if it hasn't sold in the MLS, or it was so long ago that it won't auto populate, that's where you'd be plugging that in with the address.
Erin, this is Sandra. Can I ask a question?
Of course, fire away.
What about someone who wants to lease their home? Can I do something similar with leases?
Absolutely. I'm trying to think of what would change for you. You could do the same thing. You can run a search. Your price ranges are going to be, go in and set your filter. So you're looking at those ranges for rented from, $1,500 to $2,400, whatever it may be, but you can run those the same way and either do the search in MLS and copy and paste MLS numbers, or go alternative. Good question. Nellie added a note. I like adding a closing page saying thank you, an invitation to contact me. I love that idea. And this is kind of a side note, and we'll touch on that. You can personalize when it comes to your pages for you guys to know if there's information, if you're going to start working this into your business plan on a regular basis, and you're going to send unsolicited CMAs to folks in your subdivision. I love the idea of adding a personal message, or even having a summary page of the benefits of the subdivision. So I can come to my presentation here that I created, I can add a page, and I can either pull examples from our library or create a new custom page. It sounds scary to start building out pages, but it's really easy to do. I can come right to Moxie Presents. It says, what do you want your page to look like? And it's giving me example templates. I can select a template, and it's going to say, do you want text or an image here? And I've created a personal message in text here, and it's as easy as building an email. I'm just typing away here. And then you might have a few images of subdivision amenities, area amenities, those types of things. So if you're going to work unsolicited CMAs on a regular basis, a way to show that you're an expert is showing your knowledge of the immediate area, maybe doing a summary of why so many buyers are interested in living in the area. So you can take that one step further, and I love that add-on, Nellie. All right, I'm gonna pause for questions there.
Erin, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, it's Alan, right?
Yeah, Alan Yancel said I'm driving, but been enjoying the class. So in terms of the CMA, how many months back do you recommend doing the comparative homes?
Good question. Right now, because our market is moving so quickly, and I know Austin, you guys are, it's even faster up there than it is here in San Antonio, but I wouldn't go more than a few months back right now at this time. For me, in a market analysis, there's so much happening. If you're in a small subdivision and you're trying to provide quality data and there aren't enough sales in the last couple of months, I'd actually rather you expand your search a little bit to some surrounding similar subdivisions to stay in the last 3 months or so versus going further back in time like we might have done in the past. Our market and values are increasing so quickly. The newest data, 6-month data, might be a little behind the curve since we're seeing such appreciation in all of our market. So I'd really try to focus on the last 3 months. Great question, Alan.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Follow-up workshops. Yes, I absolutely love that, asking for a friend. I'm all for workshops and doing group efforts. I love the idea of getting several of us together and working on these for our subdivisions alone. I mean, together, but not together, or not alone, together, but working on this as a group. So 100%, I'm all for that. Just to kind of recap, because I know I was really talking conceptually at the beginning, what you're trying to do is go one step further. Your neighborhood news is already providing really great content. When you've signed your folks up for neighborhood news, they're getting great content about what's happening in the market. But this is that personal touch of, hey, look what I specifically did for you. So, hey, Smith family, I'm reaching out. I want to be your real estate resource. Or again, for past clients, reaching out to them to say, in case you're curious how much equity you've built since you purchased your home with me so many years ago, this is a great follow-up to touching base with those individuals again. Be careful. I just said CMA about 100 times in the last 40 minutes, but that's not the term I would use when it comes to talking to the general public. I would tell them, I often am calling it a market analysis, home sale price analysis, whatever term speaks to you. And quite often I'm slipping in the, how are you curious how much equity you've built, which is, you know, not all markets can be as comfortable utilizing that but for our markets, San Antonio, Austin, our hill country, we're in this constantly appreciating market. That's generally a safe term. So don't call it a CMA. Consider your options for delivering it. Oh, and I didn't show you, I need to pull that back over. I also love that this works really well as a link that I can send to somebody. So let me pull that back up on my screen here, guys. And then we'll pause. Anybody utilizing unsolicited CMAs in their business practices now and having success? Anybody want to share?
Yes, I have one. She contacted me and she's just looking for a house for next year to buy. And then, okay, how's your living condition now? Are you renting or do you own a house? I own a house. All right, then I said, can I just send you the value of your house? How much is it worth now? And I sent it to her. She talked to her favorite lender, and the lender said, with that price, we're able to buy you another house, a bigger one. And now I've listed a house and it's for sale if somebody wants it.
Excellent. And that's quite often, you know, we think about open houses, for instance. So often we're thinking open houses are just your opportunity to meet a buyer, but I've gotten more listings from open houses than I have buyers, and quite often it's because that nosy neighbor comes in and they're thinking about selling, so they're wondering how their house compares to this one. So quite often my follow-up when I meet a neighbor at an open house is to follow up with them in an unsolicited CMA. So you just reminded me of that there, Jenny, and having that conversation.
I don't have success on this, but I have an idea of whenever I go to a party, and especially if they're just renting, now I've just thought that, you know what, whenever I visit somebody, I'll just give a free market analysis of their house. Hey, this is I don't have potluck food, but here's a value of your house.
I like it. And I'm not kidding. I quite often, when I go over to a neighbor's house or I'm going to gatherings, because people ask you that question when you're naturally engaging, how's real estate? You start having that conversation. I'll say, I happened to run it in case anybody was curious. I brought over some information, and I can't tell you how often that turns into a really quality conversation where they're saying, oh, I was dying to know what this house sold for, and those details. So one thing I do just want to share, when you have a market analysis you've created, I've done this with my subdivisions CMA that I showed you guys there. Let me see if I can pop right back over. The one that I created that has my subdivision, it's loading here, image on the front screen. Otherwise, I'll just use any of them to send. When you've created an unsolicited CMA or a CMA that you want to send out, if you come over to the feature and you view the web presentation, when you're actually looking at that market analysis, I'll let it load here. Once it loads and I have the full URL or web address up here, this is something that I can copy and paste and drop into a direct message on social media as well. So if I'm friends with subdivision or folks in my subdivision, sometimes I'll just pop right over to social media. Jenny, I'm going to send it to you. You're my target now since you were just volunteering your time. I'll pop right over and curious what your home is worth. And you can copy and paste that direct link. And when Jenny receives that, she can click on it and she's going to see that full CMA that I just created for her. So I can deliver that via social media direct messaging as well.
Erin, I have a question.
Sure, fire away.
Okay, on like, let's say you were sending that CMA to just a random neighbor, right? Like someone in the neighborhood. That CMA is going to show them what everything is showing for, not for their house specifically though, right? At that point, they'll be like, okay, here's my address. So I guess my question is, if you know their address, would you rather just send them their address as a subject property to view how much just their house is worth?
I would. So that is my ideal. I ideally like to create one that I can reuse for the subdivision. So I've got my template built and then I copy it, duplicate it like we did, and I change it to, 123 Main Street, and I send it specific to that. Once you get in the habit of it, it'll probably only take you 3 minutes to create every individual one, because all you're doing is changing the address, maybe a photo if you go that route. Or you can still, if you're not going to drive around to take photos or the photo wasn't in the MLS previously, you could still use the generic subdivision photo, but change the address or the name on there, the Smith family, whatever you want to include. So I certainly like going that step further. So I challenge you to work towards that habit. But if you're going to start cranking these out quickly, I also feel I keep a subdivision one handy. I've literally pulled it up at my phone on a party and pulled it up on my phone and shown them what's happening, and people like to click through and see that information.
Yeah, that's a great idea to have handy. And you gave me a good idea, because this lady, I couldn't find her address in the MLS, and I'm like, okay, it's so crazy. It was showing up in the tax record, so nothing was hidden. But I learned that it's never been on the market before. It was built in 2019, so I'll just use the neighborhood photo.
I think that's great. It's valuable content, and then your message can still be personal. Hey, Jane, I gave an overview of what's happening in the market. If you're ever curious what your home is specifically worth, reach out to me and I'll create a more specific market analysis for you. But really, when you're trying to target individuals, your goal isn't just to give them all the data they need that they can go off on their own, right? Your goal is to give them just enough information that you are reminding them you're the subject matter expert. And the follow-up is you're going to set that appointment so you can go and see the home and give them a full estimate for that follow-up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
How
Jenny.
do you, can you show me again how the one that you just sent me, the link? I just
How
got
to copy and do it? Yes, 100%. I like it. Jenny's going to go start sending these out on social media. Okay, so I went through the steps of creating my report. I'll let this load. So just to recap, Moxie presents. Create new. Seller presentation, and it's the basic seller presentation. The system forces you to work from left to right, so it's going to coach you through each of these tabs to make sure you don't miss any important information. And on the bottom right of every screen, you have a continue button. So we won't go through the whole thing again, but just a reminder of those basic steps. Once you've created the presentation and it looks just the way you want it to, you're going to click on the 3 dots and view the web presentation. I love that live web version. You double check your presentation. It looks fabulous. You're ready to send.
Erin, where are the 3 dots?
Oh,
You
I
keep
got
going
you.
over that real fast, and I can't see where the 3 dots are.
There we go. When I'm looking at my Moxie Present screen and I see my presentation, on the bottom right of any of those presentation, they have their own menu dots. Thank you for asking. And I have all kinds of, you can make quick flyers from here. That's a whole different training class. So tinker around with these later too. But what I'm looking at here is
The link.
a little bit. Well, I'm actually just going to view it. So I'm going to, I blew it up so big I can't see it. At the top of that, it says view web presentation. And when I'm actually viewing the presentation, which is the goal of what I want my folks I'm sending this to be able to have, when I'm viewing this presentation, this URL or web address at the top is the URL that directly goes to that presentation. So I'm going to copy that web address or that URL, and that's what I would paste into a window, a social media message that I'm sending those individuals.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions or anything we want to go back through again? If you're
Aaron,
oh, go ahead. Taylor.
Yeah, just how many comps do you think is a substantial amount when showing a seller?
My general rule of thumb when I'm doing a market analysis period is that I want at least 3 goods solds that are similar in value to show consistency. That's actually good market data. If I have 3 comparables that are all over the place, I need to expand. For a general CMA, again, it's going to vary on the subdivision. If I'm in a subdivision that's more of a planned development and consistent numbers, I'm happy. I'd probably try to pull 4 or 5 solds and then however many actives follow that. We're going to have a hard time finding actives now, so don't stress about the actives and the pendings. You're probably focusing a lot more on solds. Yeah. But the report looks more robust if you have 6 or 7 in there because of the charts and everything included. So if you can pull it, I'd try to have 6, 7, 8 in there at least. I wouldn't have any more than 12 because it's going to become completely overwhelming. Okay. Unless I'm in a subdivision that's just all over the place and I need to include enough that no matter where they fall, they're going to find like properties.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And anybody has any opinions, thoughts on that too? Again, that's kind of a hard generic statement. And if you have any questions, you're working a specific subdivision and want to talk about what you want to include, don't hesitate to reach out.
Erin?
Yes.
Okay, one quick question again. On the newsletter, I keep getting it confused with neighborhood news. Like I'll add them in my Engage, and then at the bottom, subscriptions, I'll obviously do the neighborhood news and then the listing announcement. But where's the newsletter?
So the newsletter is actually one of our campaigns. So in Moxie Engage, you'll find the campaigns tab. And you want to create or start that campaign. So that's a different feature. It's a little confusing. Campaigns are a series of pre-written emails that we've created, whether it's one or something that ongoingly happens every month. What was that?
How do I find the campaign?
I'll show you.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. That's going to be Moxie Engage. So I'll actually, give me just a second. We'll come back to that, Marissa. I'll wrap up on the unsolicited CMAs, and I'm happy to show you that to you. So just for everybody as kind of a wrap up, my challenge for you would be to set a goal for yourself to send 10 unsolicited CMAs every week. It sounds daunting when you're looking at doing your first one if you're just starting to tinker with this, but we talk about this on a regular basis when you're building your real estate career, whether you're a new agent or an experienced one, and you're trying to expand your sphere to find additional business. The greatest thing or the greatest challenge is showing people that you are the expert. And this is a wonderful way to show your expertise, to show your professionalism. I've never had somebody come respond to an unsolicited CMA and say that wasn't helpful information. You know, so it is a great way that you can engage them, send that information out. And there's so many different avenues, whether you're emailing it directly. If you don't know your neighbor's address and you want to target them, use websites such as fastpeoplesearch.com, or look at some of those tools such as, if you guys haven't used fastpeoplesearch.com, you can put a name or an address in and quite often find an email address for somebody. Or use a tool such as Title Toolbox where you can download a database of people, and we have past trainings on that. But seek out those individuals, your past clients, and that's a great reminder that A, you're willing to work for them. It's going to look like you spent hours doing this, but once you get the system down, it'll take you about 3 minutes a person, and it'll be that constant reminder that you're their subject matter expert, and it's a great way to get engagement and have them ask additional questions. So just remember, your goal of the unsolicited CMA is to not give them so much that they don't need more. Provide enough that shows you know the market, you're providing quality content so that they reach out to you for that appointment. You can provide extra data. Good there? Thank you, team. Anybody who got what they wanted, you're good to go. I won't take it personally if you're signing off. I'm going to stop the recording now. But for anybody who wants to see just a little recap of Moxie Engage and your newsletter versus neighborhood news, I'll show you that now.